my positions on economics and how my role on a carbon tax and on global warming. I want to start off by saying I have no clue whether global warming is correct or not correct. I'm not a climatologist, I'm not a geologist. I have no idea whether it actually exists or not. I also have no idea whether man causes it if it does exist. I really don't. When I look at this whole situation, to me, it doesn't matter whether it exists or not, period. The problem I have with global warming people in general is that they propose solutions that are extraordinarily damaging to the economy. You follow me? And when you look at this, you know, my sort of inclination is if there is a problem, it probably tilts towards global warming. I mean, if you take a sort of a risk minimization model, a type 1, type 2 error, I don't think we face a huge risk in this planet if we reduce the amount of carbon we emit into the environment. I wouldn't go, oh my God, you've got to stoke up the furnaces, make sure they pump lots of carbon because the Earth is at risk. If there is any risk, it's probably that more carbon will cause damage rather than less carbon will cause damage. But that's about as far as I'll go. And as a Bayesian looking at this situation, you might want to tilt a little bit against emitting carbon into the environment rather than towards emitting it. But this has changed a great deal in the last 50 years in the US. If you go back, I think it was 1950s, there was this huge Time magazine, there was a whole movement in the US about global cooling. If any of you remember Steve Stanley from Johns Hopkins University, Steve was a classmate of mine at prep school, really a smart guy. He did all the snowball Earth stuff, if any of you are into biology and seen snowball Earth. And there was a huge fear that the Earth was cooling in the 1950s and that we were moving into another ice age and we were going to have another snowball Earth. At that time, all the scientists got together, at least a large majority of them. They agreed that global cooling was the problem. And their solution at that time was to take soot and sprinkle soot all over the global ice packs to make sure that it absorbs more heat. I don't know if you find this humorous or not. I find it absolutely a riot to read this. Not that they're wrong. Just because they've been wrong 55 times consistently in the past does not mean they're wrong this time. But it does give you a little pause at humility for them. You know, I'm sure you don't learn this in your class, but we professors have a lot to be modest about, if you know what I mean. Let me just say that it doesn't matter. The problem with global warming people in general, and I'm going to give you one huge exception, is that they don't worry about the consequences. They're all single entry people. They want to do a carbon tax or they want to do a cap and trade, and they do not talk about the second entry in the transaction. The big exception in all of this is a guy named Al Gore. Al Gore, throughout his entire career on global warming, has always made it patently clear that he wants a carbon tax, but he does not want that tax as a standalone. I'm just going to read you this because I don't think you're going to find many economists of my ilk who really are huge fans of Al Gore as a person. But let me just read you what he wrote on this congressional testimony. For the last 14 years, I have advocated the elimination of all payroll taxes, including those for Social Security and unemployment compensation, and the replacement of that revenue in the form of pollution taxes, principally on CO2. The overall level of taxation would remain exactly the same. It would be, in other words, a revenue-neutral tax swap. But instead of discouraging businesses from hiring more employees, it would discourage businesses from producing more pollution. Are you a little bit surprised? I mean, isn't it sort of neat? But he has argued that I have never seen Al Gore ever discuss global warming and a carbon tax that he doesn't make it very clear that he does not want a net tax increase, period, from that tax. You follow me? If you look at a carbon tax, and let me just, if I can, the real problem with the carbon tax as an add-on is it has enormous economic damage to the US economy. That is the real problem. And so from my standpoint, if you can find a tax that already exists that is doing more damage than the carbon tax would do dollar for dollar, it's a no-brainer to switch that tax that's doing a lot of damage for the carbon tax, and we'll all be better off in the system. I don't know if any of you see that, but I did the tax reform for Alaska a number of years ago, where they had all sorts of income taxes, payroll taxes, sales taxes, all that stuff. They discovered the big, huge oil finds up in Alaska. They got all these severance taxes. My solution for them was they should put on these severance taxes and eliminate all the other taxes, which they did. And as such, I think it's been an enormous plus for their. So the biggest problem I have with global warming people is they don't have the second entry done correctly on that. If they were to do the second entry, I think it would be extremely, it makes a lot of sense to me that this is a natural way of doing it, of taking care of global warming.